funny because my love for you started with sneakers, and you were the first guy that taught me how important it was not to get your sneakers stepped on, and Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing.
Here you go. You go. Air Jordans. My Jordan's clean.
You know, we love having you at our shows because, honestly, when I said I wasn't blowing smoke, you really, really are inspiring when you do a panel.
It's too bright.
You really take the time to answer people's questions and give them insight on what you've gone through, because you've had an incredible life.
You know, I try to live life to the fullest. My life has been partly challenged in many ways when I was a young actor and I wanted to be working more, and then I wanted to be a star, and then all these personal things that you expect and want for. And then when I let it all go and just worked on developing a craft and a love for what I do, everything came. And so, you know, my life now is very good because I have less expectations of what should be. Not to say that you shouldn't have dreams of where you want to go and things you want to do and how you want it to go. That's sort of a creative visualization thing that I kind of practice as well. But it's great to be able to do my craft and still have a deep love for it.
Yeah, and you can tell you have a love for it with everything you put into the roles. You never stop working. All the other guests I spoke to this weekend are like, I don't understand how he does all that stuff and still does shows. What do you do for downtime? Just alone time, your time?
You know, my time is cycling. I like to cycle. I get some exercise time in there with that. I love motorcycle riding, so I try to practice that when I have a chance and when I'm not working and not putting myself in any kind of jeopardy. I'm a skier, so I'm an avid, athlete in many ways. But at other times, I just like to read, and that's something that gives me some time with myself, and it also cultivates my imagination.
You recently did a really fun commercial with Spike.
Had a blast on that.
Have any of you guys seen that commercial?
Fiat commercial.
How long did that take you guys to shoot?
We shot that in, let me see now, 2 days on the lot at Warner Brothers in Los Angeles. And it was quite a fun time. You know, I had an offer to do the commercial from the advertising agency, which is usually how it goes. And they said that Spike was slated to direct it, and that there was going to be a big rapper in it, and it would be the 3 of us in the commercial. And they usually give you the dates that they want you to do it. And on those dates, I was working on both those dates. It happened to be in Los Angeles. And so, and this is a good story to give you an example of how you should ask for what you want. That's one of my Giancarlo-isms. And so I said, it doesn't look, I didn't determine it wouldn't work, but I said, those dates I'm not available. And they said, we'll have to get back to the advertising company and all this. So finally I went, well, why am I waiting? Why don't I just text Spike and say, hey, yo, I'd love to be a part of this, but those dates don't work for me. And that's exactly what I did. I said, and I asked him in the same text, those dates don't work, but I'm free on Saturday and Sunday. Why don't we do it on the weekend? And he texted me back and he says, weekends, huh? And I said, yeah. He said, that could work, but I want to change the script and rewrite it and all this. And which he did, and it eventually wound up being just me and Spike. And because he eventually called me and said, this whole thing, I want to rewrite it, we don't want the rapper, me and you can do it. And we really had a wonderful time.
Well, and it comes across, and it's funny, when I watched it, I was like, you can tell these guys have been friends for a long time.
Yeah, and I think that's what he wanted for the commercial. The advertising agency, for those of you who don't know, I was born in Copenhagen, but I was raised in Italy to an Italian father, Giovanni, and an African-American mother. And so, which leads me to today, my biggest social media fan base is in Italy. And so I know the advertising company knew that, and so they wanted to take advantage of that as well as put me and Spike together. And Spike, his directing, and he has his own ad agency. So therefore, the agency that did the commercial worked with him, so he was able to control the creative. And there are a lot of hands in commercials. It's a producer-heavy oriented field. There are a lot of people you have to talk to and get creative approved by and look approved and fiat's involved. But it all turned out great. And more than anything, Spike was well prepared as a director. You know, he had a wonderful storyboard. He knew what he wanted to do, but he leaves room for improvisation. So it's much like life. You know, you think it's going to go one way, but you got to bring some personality to it to have it go a fun way. And for me, I work very hard at what I do, and I dedicate myself to the material of what the writer has written in both film and television, and also in the theater. I honor the writer's word, but it's also good and not to forget to have fun is an important factor as well. Yeah. We had an absolute ball.
And I rented a Fiat 500 in Italy when I went, and ripping around in one of those, it is fun.
It's a fun car. It's a fun car, and this one's all electric, so, you know, I don't know, you know, in a city like Ottawa, it would work very well. A city like Toronto, it would work very well, and it's also, you know, it's environmentally friendly, and we have to start to think about that in our world as well.
100%. I just did a rewatch of Better Call Saul. And I caught something that I had never seen before. Gus Fring's sexuality is referred to once, with one line in the show. Am I correct?
I think you are correct, yes.
One line where they're referring to something that happened. Spoiler alert, I'm sorry if you haven't seen it. But something goes down with one of your partners, and they say, hey, he might not be okay because we took out his lover. And they say, no, he's all about business. But I thought it was so, I missed it the first time through, and it was such subtle writing. It was so well done.
It's extremely subtle. You never know about Gus's sexuality at all from Breaking Bad. You have no real clue. And I think it was first referred to or questioned by fans. And I think that's how it came up. And so I know Vince and the writers of Breaking Bad like to run with ideas like that. Because for me, you know, Gus had a neutered sexuality. Yeah. He was neither one nor the other. He was completely about business, and I think that's why Vince put that line in there.
And you know, and then just the one scene when he's with the sommelier at the restaurant, and he lets his guard down a little bit. They're talking about wines, just a little, but it was just so well played by you as well. It was such a joy to rewatch that show. If you haven't seen Better Call Saul, I dare to say I almost enjoyed it more than Breaking Bad.
Yeah, it's a little bit subtler than Breaking Bad, and it's more personal because it's a smaller, a little more intimate world, I should say.
Definitely.
And it's really about, you know, completely about the relationship, you know, between Kim and Jimmy, and it makes it a more accessible show to be in, but you still need to have the edge of the bad guy and what's going on when, in effect, Jimmy is his own worst enemy. And he's the real bad guy of the show in many ways as well. The sommelier scene was interesting to play because, you know, it really was about a human being who holds themselves very close to the vest and doesn't allow themselves to have any pleasure or fun in life. And part of the season 6, you know, that episode, well, I directed 6, but that was 8, was that to show that someone who, Gus is a very different character in Saul than he was in Breaking Bad, in that he was finally vulnerable enough to a threat, and you could believe that he would feel like his life was being threatened by Lalo Salamanca. So for those of you who haven't seen the show, I won't go on too much longer, but you should watch it because it's really about a man who is unable to allow himself to have fun and allow himself an ease in his own life. And so, to me, it's very telling about how some of us who are workaholics don't allow ourselves to have the freedom to enjoy it more. And in that particular episode, it's really wonderful because you see that opening for a man to start to welcome that back into his life. Lalo's been disposed of, and he's able to relax, but you know, we know where we're going.
There's a storm coming.
Yeah, and you know he's going to have all of his attention. So, you know, our lives are a balance of many things, and we have to be malleable to understand that. There is time to play and time to work. There's time to focus and time to concentrate. And if you want to achieve your goals in life, the balance of that is important. So as I tell my children, time management becomes important. And one of my other Giancarlo isms is, what you do today determines your tomorrow. If you spend 10 minutes a day cultivating your dream, creatively visualizing it, writing it down, then the possibilities that you will attract it to yourself become greater. Because somewhere inside your spirit and in your intellectual brain, but even deeper and more importantly in your physical body, you're attracting your future by claiming what you want, by putting it out into the universe, by speaking it, by writing it. Because whether we know it or not, the universe hears that. And your dreams, the universe wishes to fulfill the dreams and desires that you have. So if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. If you don't plant the seed, the plant's not going to grow, right? So it's that simple. And that attraction, that circular motion of what you put out there is what you get back.
Told you. All right, I'm going to sit here and just keep asking questions about Spike Lee and Public Enemy and all that stuff. So I'm going to open it up to the floor. There's microphones on each side if you guys want to ask some questions. You're going to get some great answers. We'll start on this side.
First of all, sempre avante, brother.
What's that?
Sempre avante.
Andre Avante.
Yeah. The question I want to ask is, in Breaking Bad, as Gus Fring, what intrigued me most is how stoic you played the part. And I was wondering, was that the writer's influence, or was that you mastering your craft, saying, hey, I got to bring this in, because this guy's dealing with so much, but at the same time, he's got to keep it together, right?
You know, I feel like I had an opportunity with Breaking Bad to do something I'd never done before. And the writing was so very good. And normally when actors come in and we're a little insecure, we want to try to take over and have the writing be ours. But I recognized that the writing was perfection. What I had to find was how to relax and be in my own skin within the writer's words. So having thought about it, I realized the only thing I could control was my breathing and the space between the lines. That's where the acting came in. So I slowed everything down because, we put pressure on ourselves. Someone asks a question, we have to have the answer. Well, guess what? Sometimes we don't have the answer, and it's difficult for us to be honest and in our own skin and say, I don't know. Let me think about that a minute. That leaves you a moment to be mindful, to think about what your truthful answer may be. But we as human beings, the society we live in, with our cell phones and all the rest of the jazz we have that move us to a certain place in life to be answering quickly, prevent us from being mindful. So I used a mindful practice of my yoga to be thoughtful, to really hear. How many times do we catch ourselves when someone's speaking to us and we haven't heard what they've asked before we're answering them already? And so that was the practice that I used. So that was me developing the characteristics of the character that I wanted to display. Someone who was mindful, thoughtful, but really listening and really hearing what people had to say to him before he answered their question or gave a directive.
Well, you played it beautifully.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hi there.
My question's kind of simple. I'm just curious. What's your favorite project that you've worked on? Like, what's your one that just made you think, wow, that was really good. I really nailed that.
This question comes up to me often, and I always feel like I'm disappointing people when I tell the truth. So I'm going to lie. The truth of the matter is that I really love what I do, and the project that I'm working on right now becomes the most important thing to me and for me. There are some projects that have become more dynamic for me than others because they've helped me grow in a certain way. So in my work, and in anything that we do or I do, I'm looking to meet the challenge, to fulfill the obligation, but also to grow, not only as an actor, but as a human being. So I can answer that in the dynamic way that I've laid it out. Breaking Bad did something for me because it taught me to be in my own power. And the timing and space to being in your own self comes from being grounded, being rooted, and being comfortable. So I call it taking your power back. You're taking it back from your nervous position that you answer from or you react from. So it becomes non-reactive. It becomes more definitive. It becomes more you, because you're able to stay in that place that, for all intents and purposes, is basically uncomfortable. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable, right? Now, many of us aren't used to speaking to a lot of people, and every time I come and speak with a group of people, sometimes audiences 3 times this large, I'm wondering if I can maintain my truth without trying to impress or be someone I'm not. It's hard, because for me as a performer, I'm expected to be something, right? People come to my table, they call me Gus. And so immediately when I hear that, I want to drop into being Gus. I can do that like that, but I'm not here to act, I'm here to be, right? So when we start to remember that we're here to be, and that each of us individually, organically, has something very special to offer humanity, then we're in our power. You may not know what that is, right? And that may be your journey to find out. But to become rooted in who you really are means that you're living in a truth that's different than what you practice, because it's out of expectation of anyone else. And you have to, well, it's suggested that that become a natural place of habitation for you as a human being. And then that awkward and uncomfortable feeling that you have when someone asks you a question you don't know doesn't threaten you. I don't, that's not my expertise, I don't know. Let's talk about it and come up with an answer together. So for me, the dynamic projects for me have been, of course, Breaking Bad. Also, Mandalorian. What did that teach me? What was my lesson? Like with every job I take, I now give myself an assignment as if I'm in school. Mandalorian, my assignment was to have fun again, to be a kid again. Even though I'm playing this very, you have something I want. Very demonstrative, powerful character, flies his own TIE fighters, can wield the Darksaber. I had to remember that all of this is fun. So behind that stoic face was a guy who's going, yeah, I got you. I'm gonna control all of this. I love this. Those dynamics are important for me, and they allowed the character to soar. I love my character of Stan Edgar on The Boys. I mean, here's a guy who has no fear at all of Homeland, And he just simply tells him, the guy, it's like looking at a little kid who's having a tirade and saying, you are not a god, you are simply bad product. It's like, that's so cool. And not afraid that this guy is gonna laser him. So that's what I mean about being in the uncomfortable, awkward position of being yourself. So if you don't know what yourself is, then you ask yourself questions. You take your own temperature. Who am I? Why am I here? What do I have to contribute? And you allow it, you don't answer the question. We're all used to having an answer for the question. You don't have to have an answer. The key is to ask the question, and then the answer will come to you. Thank you very much.
That's all. On the side of here.
Hi there.
Hi.
Big fan of your work in Breaking Bad and the Star Wars. Just wanted to ask a question about when you get a script. Have you ever had a situation where a script has come in front of you and you've looked at it in relation to the character and said, you know what, nope, that's not going to work. And then basically gone to the producers or the directors and said, how about we try something else? And seeing how that turned out. I'm just curious if you have any good examples of something being made better through rejection.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the whole project, and I'm trying to think of a specific example. But many times I read scripts and I look at the possibility of if the character is etched in stone and is a certain way, I look at what could make that character better. So it's, in a way, it's like looking at life and like taking the best and leaving the rest. And what could this be? And then I determine whether or not there's a space to speak to the issue, right? So certain writers write things and they want the character to be a certain way and there's no room for it to change. Other writers think of it in a different way. I recently did a film called The Prince, which is not out yet. And it stars Scott Hayes in his first starring role. And I recognized when I read it that the character I played is basically a very good guy, but then at the end, he's made to look as if he is the person who committed the assault, the crime. And in speaking to the director, I said, I think this character is the catalyst angel for your lead character. And he started to speak in analogies about another film. And I said, in that film, you have people who are literally angels walking amongst us. And we want this character, I would think, to be that angel. So that in the end, when the infraction happens, it's a mistake, it's an accident. And he's actually saving our lead character from an ultimate demise. And it worked, because the director saw it the same way I did and said, oh, I think that's really the key. So I said, in this moment, where it looks like he's committed this crime, it must be an accident that this happens. And we agreed upon it. But that's a rare occasion where everything lines up and that's possible. The other scenario is that the director doesn't see it that way. The character has no, I don't want to play characters who are simply jerks or assholes. Because I feel like if that's what you want, you're asking me to play a stereotype. So even with Gustavo Fring, in a great example is in Better Call Saul, there's a vulnerability about him that allows you to see that he's human. I want to play characters that reflect who we all are, who you are, who I am, who become a mirror for us, so that you can see the possibilities of transformation within you, just as I do while I'm playing the character. Thank you. You're welcome.
Yes, hi. I have a question that's Gus related. Really enjoy you in both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. My two favorite scenes from Breaking Bad is when you've got Walter White on his knees in the desert and he's defying you, and the other being the flashback at the pool with the murder. My question for you is, playing Gus in both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, looking back at whether it's in your memory or seeing it on film, do you have a favorite scene or actor that you did in that role?
You know, a favorite scene or actor? Well, I love working with all the actors in the show. You picked two very, very profound scenes. The scene in the desert was profound, not only in the writing, but also in the way that it was shot. And when I saw that scene for the first time, I called Vince immediately, because I knew something technically was going on in the scene that felt adjusted in a way. And I caught it because time seemed to slow down. And I knew that had to be an effect of the timing of the film. So in film, it's 24 frames per second. You can speed the film up or slow it down. And at the moment that I tell Walter, I will kill your wife, I will kill your son, I will kill your infant daughter, the sky darkened. Literally, it was sunny and a cloud came and blocked the sun, which truly did happen. And then when I finished speaking to him and pulled that hood off his head, the sky, the sun was revealed again. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm looking at this scene, something happened here. And I called Vince, and Vince said, wow, because I'm a director as well, I'm a filmmaker, you have a really good eye. I said, so what did you do? He said that, because if you notice, that's when I pull the hood off his head, that's the first time we go into a close-up. Everything else is a macro wide shot. The whole scene. You see the two bodyguards, you see the car, you see me and Walter, you see the whole vista. And what they did was they had to adjust and speed up the film a little bit, because as he was watching it in editing, he noticed the same thing I did, that the cloud came and blocked the sun, and he thought it was incredible, and it was a natural thing that happened. He wanted to extend it a little longer. So that's a really wonderful example of great filmmaking and a great eye in the editing room. A film is a director's medium. We all make it as actors and as technicians and cinematography and set design and all that, but the director in the end is in the editing room making these edits that allow you to see what you see. So it's manipulated in that way to tell a story, which is, rightfully so. So that scene was really special to me, not only because it was such a great scene dialogue-wise, but because it was just all of the elements of filmmaking came together to make it perfect. The other scene was a very difficult scene because it was completely in Spanish, with all these different Spanish speakers around the pool, with Don Eladio. I think that's the scene you were talking about, right?
That's correct.
A very, very, very special scene where Gustavo was in a vulnerable position, and he had to be vulnerable without losing his power. So he had to somehow take control, because we don't know what's going to happen in that scene. And it plays into, him, I believe that was Hermanos, was that scene, where the original infraction happens that gives him this head full of hate to be able to take revenge later, in another wonderful scene at the same place. So I wanted to be able to have the vulnerability to show that something very special was taken away from Gus, and to develop this future hatred and revenge that he would need to have on Hector Salamanca and Don Eladio later. So two very, very powerful scenes that I enjoy a great deal, and probably two of my all-time favorites. But my favorite, which was back to your question, is Box Cutter.
Oh, yes.
Episode 401, because, as an actor, actors love to act, we love to perform, that's what we do. A lot of words, a lot of talking, all this. But when you're an actor and you have to use the other parts of you and make those available as much as your words, so I'm very articulate. So I love words, because that's what I do. I have to fashion the words in a certain way, or in a certain way, right? I play with that, because that plays with the attitude and the vocabulary of what I'm given. But to not have any words, and to have to portray everything physically, is what real acting is about. And in 401, there were no lines for 10 minutes. The first 10 minutes. And I love that there are plays that reflect Pinter. Harold Pinter had what he wrote in as Pinter pauses. He would just write that in. Right there is a pause. Why? There's a reason he wrote it. You have to figure it out while you're rehearsing the play. But not everything needs to be filled up with words. So to me, that's a special episode, because I say nothing. All of my work is physical. I come in, I change my clothes, these guys are sitting there, what is he doing? He's putting on the greatest catch outfit. What is he doing? No one knows. He goes and gets a box cutter, he does the deed, he goes and changes, he washes his hands, he changes his clothes back, walks to the top of the stairs, and finally looks back over his shoulder and says, now, well, get back to work. To me, that was a great exercise because I feel like acting is physical. I feel like our lives are physical. We're in these bodies that if we don't move them, they don't move anymore. So it's hard to think about always having to be in movement. But when you're in your best health, you're always moving your body, because it wants that. So, right? So I have to use my body to act as well as I use my words, and that was a great example of me using my physicality to tell you a story without using my intellect or my words, vocabulary, to tell that story until the very end of that scene, which was 10 minutes. And it galvanized not only the other actors, but it also galvanized me in terms of deepening my craft.
That's fascinating.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm a big fan of your work as Grand Moff Gideon. That was his name, right? I'm not misremembering that.
No, you're getting it. You're absolutely right.
Right. My question was, the whole thing about how much of Moff Gideon's character did you have a part in, like, making? Was it basically just you reading out the script, or, like, what parts of the character did you bring to the table?
You know, in the world of Disney and Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, the two geniuses who created the show, I knew very little. You know, you don't get the script ahead of time, you get some of your lines, and it's sort of like, you know, beginning in the dark. And so, sometimes when you don't have all the puzzle pieces put together, it can be frustrating. Other times, it can be really exciting. Because you don't know, you have the availability to tap into parts of yourself that is going to take a chance, right? Like, it's hard for some of us who have very defined lives to step out of that definition of what we think our lives are. And as an actor, it's the same way. And so I didn't know much, and I did my research on Grand Moffs, other people who played Grand Moffs, and I knew what I didn't want to do. I loved Peter Cushing's version, very close to the vest, very, you know, straight up and tall, very reserved, but I knew I wanted a little more from my character than that. And then once I started to get the lines fed to me and finally got a script of which most of it was blacked out from things they didn't want me to know for security reasons, I realized there might be some room to play, particularly with the child, when I had the child in handcuffs. And that was the moment I realized, you know, that was fun for me, as were a lot of other parts of other scenes that I did, because I was empowered. Now, if I empower you, you're going to empower someone else, right? To be themselves, to act as if. If you don't know, in my business, you act as if. You pretend, but that's the business I'm in. And you hope it's good. But you have to take a chance outside of the lines to pretend, and you could be shot down. I had been in the past by other directors. But in the scene with Grogu, literally improvised was, have you ever seen one of these? You know, oh, he reaches for it, and Darksaber's in my hand, be careful, you're liable to lose an eye. That's all improvised. That was all me playing, and then keeping it. And so that came out of a moment that I was empowered in another scene by Jon Favreau, who wasn't directing the episode, who was called down because, you know, Cara Dune we had a problem, the director.
Oh, yeah.
I asked a question. She has this big blaster on me, and I'm like, you know, we're supposed to get into this fight. I'm like, why doesn't she just pull the trigger and shoot me? The director scratched his head and went, oh, that's a good question. And so Jon Favreau came down, he had to be on another set, and he looked at me and he said, okay, you know, this is why I hired you. I said, you hired me for this, you got a director right next to me. He said, I know, but, you know, you're gonna figure this out. And I said, yeah, I could figure it out. You know, you're gonna figure this out, I know you can. I gotta go to stage 13. There's some other options here. I laid out 2 different versions. The director didn't agree with one. Rick, who was lovely, he said, you guys figure it out. But Giancarlo, you can figure this out.
Wait, who's Rick?
Rick was the director of that episode. And so John went away. And what I quickly realized was that was empowerment. Right? You've been doing this for a lot of years. There's some other options available, even besides the 2 that you laid out. Right? Figure it out. But that was not like putting it on me. It was empowering me to use my creative mind, my physical body to figure it out. And so she comes toward me, and basically I reach for her, and I said, you should turn the gun around on its butt and smash me backwards. Oh, the director's like, you're gonna have you fall down? Everyone's worried about insurance and falling and no stunt person. I said, yeah. She's gonna hit me with the butt of it, she's gonna knock me out for a second, I'm gonna come to, I'll be in cuffs. We solved the problem. But that's empowerment, right? To empower you to find the tools to have it work seamlessly. And that's important. So besides your questions about improvising, there's also improvising with your body and enhancing, right? Not trying to tear down what has been written or in the stage directions, but enhancing that. Any situation you come to in your life, I think our job is to find compassion. Our job is to enhance what's already there. Our job is to lift each other up and make each other better. Our job is to empower the world to become a more cohesive, compassionate, understanding place. Our job, that's our job. And that should be a part of our humanity that we walk around with each and every day.
On this side.
So, I love, for Mandalorian, on top of from topic of Mandalorian, the Darksaber, which is my favorite weapon in Star Wars. How did it feel to be one of the first actors to actually wield that in live action?
You know, it felt great. I know that a dear buddy of mine had wielded it, Samuel L. Jackson, and I know since then there have been a few other actors who've had it. I know I probably was the second or maybe the third actor to have this Darksaber. I know from the fans how important that is, and because I did my research and I went, okay, this may seem like, you know, just a little play saber to you, and in my living room, prior to getting there and having that Darksaber in my hand, it was a broomstick. You know, a piece of wood. I had to feel how I'm going to use this. But it felt great. It felt playful. It felt empowering. You know, from the time I was a kid, I really loved the whole legend of King Arthur. You know, the sword and the stone. Like the right person is going to be able to, you know, release that and use it for good. And to me, even though Moff Gideon is on the dark side, this is something he always wanted. And he states it in a later episode in 3 where it wasn't written. You know, the one thing he says, I've always wanted. And they left out the answer to that. And that stopped me on the set in this Beskar, with my second incredible costume, going, wait a minute. And I already knew what I wanted to say, but you know, again, Rick is directing, a wonderful director, John is up in his office, and I said, we got to pause here for a minute. And Brendan Wayne, who's so wonderful, who I was having this big fight with, I said, can we call John down? And I said, and John came down, he folded his arm, scratched his head. I said, I really believe that he has to answer this and finish this sentence. What do you think? I said, the one thing I've always wanted, the Force. And John said, well, let me call Dave down. We had to go find Dave Filoni. He's out walking the dog. We're on the set, right? He's out in the lot walking the dog. Dave comes in. This crew sits down. We have a 45-minute conversation. Dave is like, well, I thought we had that in there. Well, no, but let me see the script. No, wait, why not in there? Well, no, we had it and we took it out. Well, we didn't want to be so obvious. We go back and forth for 45 minutes, and I say, guys, this is what this guy wants. This is what you all want. This is what we as human beings want. Whether we're talking about the Darksaber, whether we're talking about the empowerment of each other, we want the Force. What is the Force? It can be used for good. It can be used for evil. It can be used to empower. It can be used to uplift. It can be used to make you stronger and make you feel more confident about yourselves. It can be used to lift your self-esteem. This guy is saying all of that. I'm looking at the bigger picture of life, no matter what character I'm playing, that this is what he wanted, right? He wanted that. Oh, we all want that. And guess what? And let me say it. You know, we become mirrors for each other, right? In our lowest moments, in our darkest moments, in our brightest moments, we become mirrors for each other. We become mirrors for our children. We become responsible for all of us in some little way. Whether it's one person that you affect on your journey, or whether it's 10 or 15 in one moment. That is what we're supposed to do in our lives if we're comfortable enough in our own skin to do it. Right? Why do we become not comfortable in our own skin? Because it's hard for us to look at our faults and to be honest about it. Because we become, as human beings, as dark as our darkest secret. What are you not telling me about you? Well, I'm not telling you a lot because you might judge me, or because I might also feel such shame and ridicule for myself. But when you start to let up the secrets, you start to become more human. You start to realize that there are more people just like you who are afraid to really show who they are for fear of being judged or put down or bullied, right? But we're all on a journey, and the journey most of the time, for most of us, is from the dark to the light. Because the darkness that we hold in ourselves for who we are and what we're ashamed of is the darkness that allows us not to show our light, right? So no one's perfect. We're all works in progress, right? But to work in that way towards something that will allow us to feel better about who we are and to acknowledge our goodness, our brightness of spirit, our intention, Giancarloism. Intention is everything. We can look in each other's eyes and see what our intention is surrounding anything we say. We already know what the truth is because we can see it in each other. But yet we still continue to lie not only to ourselves, but to each other. Intention in life is everything. It's everything because that's the thought form, that's the kernel that begins the process of thinking right about you, right about your neighbor, and wanting the best for everyone, not just yourself. Now, in our lives, we're told by advertising what to wear, how to walk, how to look, what kind of sneakers are gonna make us have some clout, right? We're told that. No, we are. It's suggestion. The power of that suggestion is strong. If I have a Porsche, if I have a Rolls, people are gonna look at me differently. Right? That's a very strong suggestion. So we're always many of us are trying to keep up to a standard that we may not even want. Right? So the standard of what's inside you is more important than what's outside you, and to grow that and to feed that is one of the most important things in life.
We have time, I know you guys are gonna hate me, we have time for one more question. We're gonna go on this side. All of you, Giancarlo's still gonna be here, so you can come to this table. Have a couple of words with them there, put something aside, but we got one more question on this side, right here.
All right, so my question was, oftentimes as an actor, you get to stuck in a role for many years, like when you Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, you got stuck playing Frank, right? What was one thing though about the character, after a while you probably realized you absolutely hated about him as like a person?
You know, I don't feel stuck in any role. I really do honestly feel grateful and thankful. I've had a really marvelous and wonderful career. I don't feel that I've been typecast in any way because I choose roles and characters that are complicated. I have a list of good guy characters because I'm very defensive because everyone thinks I play the bad guy. Right? So I got lists of movies where I play good guys, which I won't relate to you. But to answer your specific question, there is an adrenalized version of all of us, especially me, that is hypervigilant. And Gustavo Fring was hypervigilant. And so one of the things that I'm realizing now is that hypervigilance is a part of me, coming from a military school background, from prior to that, to wanting to be a priest, to take care of other people in a spiritual way, to knowing that there's a previous incarnation that I lived as a warrior, which is the destroyer, right? So I look at that warrior inside me now as the destroyer of my own ego, the destroyer of all those things that are rigid beliefs that many of us hold hard and fast to from our families of origin, or our own, or our generational traumatic experience that's transferred through the blood, through our consciousness, to each of us that we sometimes need to throw away. So that hypervigilant version of me obviously came out in Gus Fring. And it still exists for me because of who I am. People come at me all day, want autographs, come up from behind me, scare me, take pictures of me when I'm, stare at me when I'm not looking, or even when I am, take pictures of me. All that creates a hyper-vigilant human being. And so part of what, the one thing, you know, I want to say I don't hate anything about Gus, but the one challenge and the one thing that I maybe dislike is that hyper-vigilant version of Gustavo that's on the set all the time is the guy who sees everything in the room. I'm looking at you now, I'm seeing 3 people leave on that side, 2 people walk out on that side. You know, I'm a hyper-vigilant human being. I know what's happening in the room. I know how to get out of here like that. I know where my exits are. I walk into a restaurant, I sit down with my, you know, my back is toward the wall, so I can see everything. So I've developed that. So all of that has to get unraveled for me to start to feel comfortable. Not to say I shouldn't be aware, but to say I shouldn't carry this amount of adrenalized, you know, hyper-vigilant human being inside me all the time. But I also come from a divorced family. I come from a violent mother and father toward each other. You know, all of those things develop that traumatic experience that has become me. So now I'm unraveling some of that so I can be more at ease, more comfortable, more in a place where I don't have to know everything that's going on. I'm also in a field where all of my attention as an actor, when the camera's rolling, and all of my attention has to be with my scene partner. So I'm giving all of my attention to one place, but due to circumstance of the situation of a scene, I also have to be able to be aware of where all the cameras are, where the boom mic is, and all these people are in my eye line, but they're not really there. You know, so you have to really learn to focus. So it's a real analogy for life. You know, what you resist in life persists. When you resist knowing about yourself, that resistance persists in your relationship to yourself, right? What you focus on becomes, and what you commit to becomes very, very important. So for me to make decisions about where to focus my energy and how to manage my time becomes really, really important, especially for all of those in the audience who have busy lives, who have children. I have 4 daughters, who have multiple layers of personalities to deal with and human beings outside of their own family. It takes real focus to really parcel all that out, listen thoroughly, be mindful in answering, yet hear beyond the words. All of those you know, in the audience who have children, you know your children will say something, but you're really looking for them. You're looking and feeling what they really mean. That's all important communication. And it's a communication that can further us in our relationships to each other and to the world. And that was a great question, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much. As always, it's such a pleasure to spend time with you. And I know a lot of people are going to walk out of here better for it. You're really, really a great human. I'm really, really glad I've got to spend a bit of time with you over the years. And thank you again for coming to our show.
Truly my pleasure. I love you all.